So, have you ever really stopped to consider Earth's role, in the grand scheme of things? Like,
hmm
beyond just being, well, the place we live. Could it be something more, maybe alive in a way we don't usually think about?
That's a fascinating question. It definitely pulls at some pretty deep threads,
Hmm.
ideas that connect ancient beliefs with, well, more modern sort of spiritual thinking about the planet.
Okay, yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah.
Because today we're doing a deep dive into something, well, it's potentially a bit mind-bending.
Mhm.
This whole concept that Earth isn't just rock and water, but a living thing, an entity, and that it's connected to, like, higher spiritual stuff.
Right. And we're looking at this mainly through the lens of a YouTube video by Essiana.
Hmm?
He offers a really unique perspective on these big topics.
Yeah, he does. But we're also going to weave in some other interesting threads, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll connect it to things like the perennialist texts, the Rose of the World, and even some ideas from Carlos Castaneda. These sources kind of touch on similar themes from different angles.
Perennialism. That's the idea of, like, a core truth behind different traditions.
Yeah, basically. A sort of underlying reality that different spiritual paths might glimpse.
Got it. So our goal here for you listening isn't to say this is how it is. It's more about unpacking these complex ideas,
Right.
seeing where they come from, and maybe thinking about what they might mean for how we see Earth and our place on it. We want insight, not just a data dump.
Exactly. It's about exploring different ways of seeing, connecting the dots, maybe
Hmm.
trying to build a richer picture.
Okay, let's jump in. This idea brings up first the planetary logos.
Mm.
What is that exactly in his view?
So, Orgy puts forward this interpretation where Jesus Christ is the planetary logos of Earth,
Oh, okay.
which is, a bit different from how Jesus is traditionally seen, just as a savior.
Right.
Here, the focus shifts. He's seen more as a direct representative of the Creator,
Yeah.
specifically tasked with managing things here on Earth, governance, you could say.
Huh. So like a cosmic manager. Or maybe a steward, overseeing the planet's affairs.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. Think of someone responsible for the overall balance, stepping in when there are major issues within Earth's domain. That's the gist of the planetary logos role as Dima sees it.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If other traditions have similar figures, maybe with different names, but fulfilling that kind of role.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And, this ties into the next big piece because Berne isn't alone in saying Earth is more than just a planet.
Ah, right, the Earth itself being alive.
Yes. He and the Rose of the World and Castaneda, they all suggest Earth is a living being, maybe even conscious. A deity, some might say.
That's a huge conceptual leap from just, geology and biology.
It really is.
Mm.
And it's interesting because Elndo points out something about history. He says ancient cultures often focus more on worshiping the sun or the moon,
Uh-huh.
while Earth was kind of seen as, well, the background, the
Yeah.
stage, which is kind of the opposite of our modern Mother Earth idea, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, that is strange. Why do you think that might have been? Maybe the sun and moon seem more active, changing.
Perhaps their cycles are very visible, very dramatic. But then you have the Rose of the World, taking this living Earth idea even further.
How so?
It suggests that our souls, our actual souls,
Mm-hmm.
originate from the Earth itself.
Whoa. Okay, that really deepens the connection. That's Mother Earth on a whole other level.
Absolutely. It means Earth isn't just our home, it's literally our source. It blurs that line between physical and spiritual in a really profound way.
And this living Earth, it's not just passive, right? These sources suggest it can understand, maybe feel, interact with us.
That's the implication. And Pachesh brings in Castaneda's work here to illustrate it. He talks about the strips.
Oh, right. From the fire from within, the strips of awareness.
Exactly. So in Castaneda, humans are described as having two of these, which basically define our normal perception of reality. But the really interesting bit is the claim that Earth has way more. Homoni mentions numbers like 24 or maybe even 48.
48 compared to R2.
Yeah. So if you think of these puras as indicating complexity or awareness, well, that suggests Earth possesses a level of consciousness that's just vastly beyond ours.
Wow. So if Earth has that kind of awareness, how would that even manifest? Like geologically?
Yeah.
Or ecologically? Or something we can't even grasp?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's hard to imagine from our perspective.
Okay, so moving on a bit. Homoni uses the Rose of the World again when talking about Jesus Christ, suggesting his arrival wasn't just the one time we usually talk about.
Yes, this is another really intriguing part. The Rose of the World proposes that Christ's appearance on Earth wasn't a singular event, but at least the second time it happened.
The second time.
At least. And it connects this to a historical curiosity, the fact that there used to be two different dates for celebrating Christmas observed in some places.
Huh. I always heard that was just calendar mix-ups, like Julian versus Gregorian.
That's the standard explanation, yeah. But Oda floats the idea, what if that historical echo actually points to these multiple appearances?
That definitely makes you look at old traditions differently. So why? According to the Rose of the World, why would a second arrival have been necessary? What was the problem?
The text describes a major breakdown, a failure in the system of karma, specifically at the afterlife level.
Okay, how so?
The idea was that souls, after they died, having worked through their life stuff, their karmic debts, they weren't being allowed to progress, to ascend, even if they'd balanced their accounts, so to speak.
So they were stuck.
Essentially stuck, yeah. Trapped in a cycle with no way forward even after doing the work.
That sounds awful, like finishing your sentence in prison, but the warden won't let you out.
That's exactly the analogy used.
Yeah.
An unjust blockage. So, the Rose of the World claims that Jesus' descent between the crucifixion and resurrection, the period the Bible doesn't detail much.
Right, the harrowing of hell, sometimes it's called?
Sort of, but maybe more specific. The text says he, a kalunyapic. It's a tricky phrase, maybe something like the gray-named one forcibly disrupted the cult.
The cult being this broken karmic system.
Exactly, this stagnant, blocked system in the afterlife.
And the result of him disrupting this was
the creation of purgatory. That's the immediate consequence described. Not necessarily a place of punishment, but more of a transitional space.
okay.
A realm where beings could properly resolve their remaining karmic issues and then, importantly, have the potential to move on, to continue evolving spiritually.
So this intervention was seen as crucial for basically fixing the whole karmic process, getting it flowing again.
That's the idea presented, yes. Restoring the intended path for spiritual progression.
It makes you think about concepts like divine grace or mercy in other faiths, doesn't it? How they intersect with ideas of karma or cosmic law.
It does raise those comparisons. And it also brings up a pretty obvious and difficult question.
Which I bet is on a lot of people's minds right now.
Yeah. If Christ intervened in such a fundamental way, fixed this cosmic plumbing issue, why is there still so much suffering? Why disease, old age, death, all of that?
Right. Does Amma address that?
He doesn't really dive deep into answering it in this specific talk, but he does briefly mention the new chronology.
Ah, Fomenko and Nosovsky.
Yeah, those guys. He notes that they offer some, let's say, very unconventional views on history and these kinds of timelines, which might reframe the question.
Yeah.
But he doesn't go into their arguments, and, their work is highly controversial, we should add.
Understood. He also brings Buddhism into the picture briefly, right? The goal of liberating all beings.
He does. He touches on the emergence of Buddhism with its focus on compassion and freeing everyone from suffering. He suggests thinking about its timing relative to the events described in the Rose of the World. And he brings up a specific text.
Sava, the tale of Barlaam and Josaphat. It was apparently a really popular monastic story in 16th century Russia. Okay, and the connection is?
Well, the story itself, though it's set within a Christian framework, sounds remarkably like the life story of Gautama Buddha.
Really? How so?
The young prince, sheltered from suffering by his father, who then encounters old age, sickness, and death, and renounces his life to seek enlightenment. It's very similar.
Wow.
And Katawa points out that the father's motivation in the Christian story trying to keep his son from the world's harshness actually echoes early Christian motivations for monasticism, for becoming a hermit. So maybe there was some cross-pollination of ideas, or perhaps just a similar spiritual impulse showing up in different ways.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. As we start to kind of wrap this up, what are the main takeaways, the core ideas we've explored?
We started with the idea of Earth as a living entity, maybe even conscious, drawing from Alora, the Rose of the World, and Castaneda.
Right, the living planet idea.
Then we looked at War's specific interpretation of Jesus Christ as the Planetary Logos, the manager or governor of Earth. And we spent a good chunk of time on the Rose of the World's a rather unique take on Christ's intervention in the afterlife, disrupting that blocked karmic system and creating purgatory.
Okay. So for you listening, the invitation here is really to think about how these perspectives land with you. Does considering Earth as alive or thinking about a planetary logos, Does it change how you feel about the planet, your connection to it?
Yeah, just reflecting on these concepts, it might open up a different sense of interconnectedness, maybe hints at layers of meaning in our lives that we don't always stop to consider.
Definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
And maybe here's one last thing to ponder on your own. If Earth is a conscious being with its own awareness, like those suggest,
Hmm.
how might our actions, big and small, affect it in ways we don't even realize?
Mm-hmm.
And could thinking about something like a planetary logos, even just as a concept, give us a new framework for tackling the huge global challenges we're facing? It's certainly something to chew on after this deep dive is over.